Good evening, and welcome to chat number 21 of What Does Nature Mean to You? Tonight, really excited. We have Margaret, who is one of the facilitators at Frazzled Cafe, joining me. So we just had a quick test run a little bit earlier, and it all seemed to go smoothly. So let me just invite Margaret back in. And then we'll get her to tell us all about Frazzled Cafe and also what else that she does. Here we go. Hello.
Hi, Ruth.
Well, thank you. I'm glad we did the test run. It's always a good thing to do.
Yes. Yeah. Well, thank you so much for inviting me along. It's really lovely to see you.
Oh, absolute pleasure, and thank you. I mean, I'll explain to people watching and people that watch this back later. I reached out to the Frazzled Cafe to see if someone might chat to me. And I heard that you replied with lightning speed to the email.
Yeah. Well, I just love what it is you do. So it really, really interested me, and I've got a connection to that myself. So.
Well, thank you. Thank you. Well, what I normally do at this stage is actually ask my guests to introduce themselves, because of course I've said you're the facilitator at Frazzled Cafe, but I also know you do other things too. So maybe you could tell us a bit more about who you are, what you do, and where you do it.
Yeah, well, I'll start with Frazzled Cafe because that's how you connected us through that. And Frazzled Cafe was set up by Ruby Wax, the comedian who, as we know, is not shy about talking about her mental health, which is absolutely brilliant. And she recognized that there was just a need for people to have a safe space, an environment in which they could talk openly about how they feel. Our response normally to how are you, or the acceptable response is, I'm fine. But actually, do you know, sometimes we just need to say, I'm not fine. You know, it's a really not fine. And so that's what Frazzled is about. It's about creating an environment in which you can be with people who understand because they're feeling the same, and where you can feel safe and know that you're not judged. And as facilitators, what we do is just create that environment. So we have a few little boundaries that we set up. We start with a mindfulness exercise and just kind of create a calm environment, and then we just open it up to being able to talk about how you feel. And originally we did it in the Marks and Spencer's cafes, of course. With COVID, it's opened up really an opportunity for us to be able to now do it online, and it means that we can get out to so many more people, and so many more people can be able to just open up and talk. And we used to do it just every couple of weeks. Now it's every day, and people, you know, with lots of different facilitators in the day, and sometimes Ruby too. Just having these spaces, and there's only about 12 people can come in on them. So it's kind of feels quite cozy as well. So it's just been absolutely brilliant. So, but I'm also, you know, sort of my day job is an osteopath. So I'm really interested in how I can't separate the body and the mind, you know, sort of how we are thinking affects how our body is. And I see that and feel that in people's bodies when they come to see me. But also if we're in pain, that really affects how you're thinking as well. So I'm really kind of interested in that mind-body connection. But I'm also, you know, sort of really interested in nature too. One of the things I also volunteer at is there's a new big project called RHS Bridgewater, which is a fantastic big new garden that's being built from scratch in the northwest. And I volunteer once a week there, and that has been absolutely fantastic, to be in nature and be part of something. You know, it's felt a real privilege to be part of something that you can start from scratch and work on from just bare ground up. So, you know, and for me, that's brilliant because I've always loved nature. So to be able to be part of that, particularly during this time, has been absolutely brilliant. Although they did close down for a while, but it's opened up again now, which is fabulous. So,
that's so many questions from that. Thank you. I mean, how did you get involved with Frazzled Cafe? What was that story or journey?
It was a few years ago, I was driving back from a friend's and I was listening to Radio 4 and Ruby was talking about it um, on the radio. And I just thought, that's absolutely fantastic. That's so needed. And I just immediately went back just to find out what it was about. And then I saw, oh, they need facilitators. And I just thought, well, I could do that, and contacted them. And after a while, joined and was trained, and so have been involved with it since. But it is quite close to my heart because I went through a period myself of post-traumatic stress, so which I know that I've read that you've also experienced that. And for me, my mental health at that time, I struggled, and definitely being out in nature really, and being able to talk to people really, really helped me. So I've really kind of got that connection there as well. But it's just amazing, and I get something from it as well, just hearing other people. I feel kind of connected to other people because I've experienced those stresses. But it's just wonderful. You can see such healing happening when people are just allowed to be completely free about talking about what it is they feel.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I mean, as you and I connected a bit earlier in the week, and we had a quick phone chat, and that was one of the things that really came about for both of us, saying that it's for people that feel that they are able to share their story a bit more, or some of that experience, how important that can be for others just to hear that, to perhaps resonate with it in some way. And even that in itself can be a really powerful part of healing, really.
Yes, definitely. And one of the things, the subjects that definitely came up, particularly during the early part of lockdown, was on Frazzled, and the talks that we had were around nature and how important that was for us to get out, and the heightened experience that people had. I often heard people say that the birds are singing louder now. And you sort of think, well, no, they're not. It's because we're quiet. Just for once, us humans are quiet. But that kind of intense experience of being able to hear that sound that we might not have listened to before, and because we were only allowed a small amount of time to go out, it became precious, didn't it? And so going out into the woodlands, the forest, just wherever you could, to get some green space and some fresh air, became just much, much more important and much more of an intense experience. It was really interesting to hear people talk about that, and also people who were in high-rise flats perhaps and isolating because they were vulnerable, feeling the absence of that as well. So, and I'd like to talk a little later about how, if you are in that situation, what you can do to, perhaps just experience nature on even if it's a smaller level.
That would be great, because it's definitely a running theme again that's come up in these conversations. Of course, we can say how nature is so important for us in so many ways, and yet how difficult it can be for an enormous amount of people to access it for various reasons, including just completely housing and geographical. So yeah, absolutely. Maybe when we get to sort of the what would your advice be question, then we can kind of elaborate on there. But let's kind of take it back to before all of that, and ask you, what is your earliest memory of connecting to nature in some way?
That would be being brought up on a stud farm down in a little village in Sussex, with 6 other siblings. So nature was actually, and the fields were our playground. That was our life then, so we were just straight out onto grass, poking around in the hedgerows, finding little nests that were full of eggs and watching them hatch over time. I mean, it was a privilege really to be able to be brought up in that environment. I didn't appreciate it at the time. And then, sort of when it was raining, we'd go and play in the hay shed, take the bales down, create enormous nests, pretend we were massive birds. So if the owner of the farm is watching now, yeah, that was us. You messed up your hay barn. Sorry. It's out now. And sort of go to the local pond, get a stick with a bit of string on, and fish. We never caught fish. I used to drag my brother out of the lake once in a while. He's a bit clumsy. We dry him out and bring him home, but never caught fish in our lives. But yeah, just lovely, lovely memories. Primroses going up the hill when primroses were still around. So yeah, lovely, lovely memories of that.
Beautiful. And so kind of hearing those memories, and then you talking about nature having been really important for you, I guess in recent history, I wonder, was there a gap in between? Was there a time when you lost that connection, or?
I think I didn't appreciate how important it was to me until I went to London, and the absence of it. And I suddenly got interested in gardening then. And I didn't even realize how important it was until it wasn't there. So yeah, we were lucky to have in this rented house, there was a garden, and we just made a great big vegetable garden, which was brilliant to do. So I don't think I've ever lost connection with it. I've just had periods where it's been more intensely important to me. And when I moved up north, we're surrounded by beautiful areas of hills, and the Lake District, Wales, the Peak District. None of them are too far away, and so I would love to go out and walk in the hills, and that was an amazing experience. I mean, that my world's become a lot smaller in lockdown. It's just the local park and the wood, but sort of you start to appreciate the areas around you.
Yeah, I guess a lot of us have taken things for granted until different things come up in our lives, or and this year in particular for most of us, that sort of shifts that perspective, and perhaps we realise those simple things, how important they are really. So you've touched upon a bit of your own personal journey as well. What does nature mean for you now then?
Well, it's mental health, calm, beauty, peace, sense of well-being, escape. It's just, when I was going through the post-traumatic stress, that everything's heightened. All your anxieties are just there, and you're hyper-vigilant. And just walking out into a green area, or just looking at a tree, going into the woods, really calmed me down. And I remember once just actually taking just a seed from the ground, one of those beautiful sycamore seeds, and bringing it home, and just looking at it, and sort of putting on a piece of white paper, and then I brought a few more things home the next time, wrote words on them. And then I've started to actually write sentences. And before I knew it, was writing about nature and its connection to healing and health. And I'm now quite involved in writing. One of the things that I've done during lockdown is to get involved with a writing group online. And a lot of those people, the people I'm with, are very interested in nature and write about nature. And that kind of bridge between how we experience nature and how we feel it, and the written word. And sometimes we use music as a prompt, or a painting. And just to connect all of those things and express it in different ways is pretty amazing. So
certainly being in nature, as you said, is good for mental health and for well-being, but also creativity as well. So kind of freeing that up. I remember one of my sessions, we looked at writing from just sort of free form words of whatever words came up, to then trying to write a traditional haiku, Japanese haiku, with a certain amount of syllables in each line. And there was a moment where the participants kind of felt a bit of nerves and anxiety about that, of, oh, am I going to do it well? Am I going to get it right? And once we kind of fattened different exercises in to let go of that and just start creating, there was this immense, again, joy and connecting it. And sometimes it was silly, and they didn't have to be amazing haikus, and you didn't have to share them with anyone else. But again, just somehow creating and letting go of parts of our brain that kind of frees us up. And ultimately brings us back to just being in the present moment, really.
Yes, absolutely. And I agree completely with that. And I think I haven't spoken to Natasha about this yet, but from Frazzled. But one of my dreams would be to actually hold one of the Frazzled Cafe sessions, or some of them, actually out in the environment, in nature. And I just think that would be absolutely amazing. It might be a bit of a logistical nightmare,
There is that.
but you know, that kind of connection between nature and talking, and I find that when I'm in the gardens at Bridgewater, when we're all together in small, well, we're sort of spread out now like plants, a couple of meters apart, but you know, sort of that conversation and that connection and that storytelling that once was part of our, you know, sort of our being, and we've sort of lost, and I think just becomes so important, you know, and sort of you're freed up, I think, in nature as well, because you're involved in something, and you're just kind of chatting on the side, but it's amazing what you start to talk about and how freeing that can be as well.
Absolutely.
It's that kind of connection to yourself, connection to other people, and connection to nature together.
Yes.
It's really important.
And I think it somehow removes those walls that can surround us when we're sat in a room, that somehow allow us to be a bit distracted and not demand anything of us, and you can kind of be focusing on whether if you're doing the gardening or you know, just looking at that tree or looking at that view or that bird, and naturally conversation can flow sometimes. And this came up when I was talking to Walk and Talk for Men charity. Again, having that nature space, kind of holding that, so allowing men who were struggling to talk about their mental health, and then suddenly being surrounded by nature, it kind of gave that, as you said, almost that freedom and that space and that gentleness, I guess.
Yeah, and that's so true, isn't it? Because that's one of the things that is so problematic, is that men are almost supposed to be strong, and having emotions and expressing emotions can be a very difficult thing. But being in an environment where it's almost the pressure's taken off that, because you're doing something else, but by the by, you just happen to talk about, you know, those difficult things that you're feeling as well. And I think in an environment like that, in nature, it does make it easier.
Definitely. And interesting you bringing up dealing with PTSD symptoms and going out into nature and finding that was helping. And again, that was definitely my journey with that as well. And I know when we spoke on the phone, you said it'd be nice for me to share some of my story, and a lot of other people have said that too. So I'm definitely going to have another chat at some point where people can ask me questions, I guess. But just to share that little bit, you know, you talked about hypervigilance, you know, and feeling very alert, and you know, I certainly, at the times when I was really managing those symptoms, I might be in somewhere like a shop or a supermarket, and someone might just drop something, and that could really freak out my nervous system, really shake me up. And suddenly being out in nature, it was just this subtle sort of, I don't know, tickling of the senses in a way that calmed everything down. And you know, I've since, you know, researched and done my studies in forest bathing that talk about the parasympathetic nervous system and kind of bringing us into that rest and digest state. But also something about our senses are stimulated in nature, but in a natural way that we were perhaps designed to be, as opposed to in our high-rise buildings and traffic and crazy busy shops. And there is more and more research being done into that as well, which is just kind of almost confirming perhaps what we all know somewhere inside.
Yeah, absolutely, and I agree with that. I mean, for me, I'm kind of pretty grounded in that way. I need to have the science behind it as well. So it's really reassuring when I hear, you know, that what it actually physically does to us, but also that having positive thoughts, which tend to naturally flow when you're in nature, if you really concentrate on those positive thoughts, it actually physically starts to change the pathways, the neural pathways in your brain, which to me is just amazing, that can happen. So with that knowledge, it almost makes it okay for me to do something that might be seem a bit airy. But yes, so the science is there, which is brilliant.
Yeah, tree hugging is actually scientifically good for you.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, and I just tell people as they're walking by, that's that's what I'm doing. This is science. This is science. This is not. Yeah.
And I guess, we talked a little bit about this year, kind of, I guess, magnifying that for you, really. I mean, have you had any new perspectives on that? And certainly in the work that you do in the facilitating too, again, you talked about nature coming up in Frazzled Cafe a lot more. So would you say this year has kind of shifted it for you as well?
Definitely, it's just become something that I'm just more intensely aware of and involved in, and real active realization that needs to be part of my life, a very, very definite part of my life. And I think a lot of people have reassessed, sort of over this period of time, what it is they're doing, because we've had time, we've had time to do that. Sort of what is this important to me? What is important to me? And that definitely is something that I find is really, really key. If I don't get out and get my hit of nature, it does affect my mood. So I find that really important, and also experiencing it in different ways. The writing about it, or listening about pieces of music, even sort of that are written about nature, or sort of, and that has just a different experience in me and other people as well. And I think experience it in all those different ways can also intensify it, but also sort of can bring back. So for me, it can bring back the sense of the feelings of when you're in a beautiful environment, maybe you can't be in that particular moment on a piece of music, or look at a picture, or look at a piece of writing that you've done, and it connects you back to the feeling that you had when you were in that environment. And I think that's really important.
That's lovely, and almost a good bit of advice, I think, for others, which leads me seamlessly through to the third question of what would your advice be to others?
So I think really that it doesn't have to be big, so you don't have to go out for great big journeys, but you really need to get out, even if it's opening a window. Try and experience nature in whatever way you can, no matter how small, even in a city centre. You can. I was in the Manchester city centre the other day, last week, and I picked up these leaves, and they're ginkgo biloba leaves, and they're just, they're so beautiful, and sort of that's something I do tend to do, is pick up leaves as I go, all pieces of, I tend not to denude trees. It tends to be something that's fallen off. I don't go around cutting off all the branches, but bring something like that home with you. It kind of brings the memory of the walk that you had, but also when you're out and walking, really look at things, experience them, not just by looking, but remember the smells, touch things. What does it feel like? Even the taste. So if you're walking along the seafront, don't pick up the mud and eat it, but, that would be a bit weird. But if you're walking on the seafront, there's this, you get a salty taste, and so experience whatever time you can have intensely as you can. And then if you are having a time where you're feeling anxious indoors, then actually close your eyes and relive that experience through all of your senses. And maybe do bring something and write a bit about it, because again, if you write it or draw it, if you've got that experience, or if you're really talented, pick up a piece of music. Not my talent, but sort of, and all of those things can just bring you back to that moment of feeling well and happy and calm, and just completely change that kind of sense of being really frazzled.
And
also just little things,
talking,
like you can, if you're in a high-rise flat, you could just grow some herbs, grow some mint, make some mint tea. Really simple things, just having that, and then something like that has a smell like mint, and just rubbing that, the kind of, again, the sense of smell, looking of green, because green changes the hormones in our system and makes us feel happy as well. So all of those things are really simple little things that you can connect in a way to nature.
Yeah, it's funny. I did a little meditation online with some people, and was encouraging people who have a garden or access to a green space to join that way. But if not, if they're inside by the window, or if they've got a house plant. And then I thought, well, what do I do? I was really trying to rack my brain for every single possible scenario. What do I do if people don't have a house plant, or their window looks out onto, I don't know, a brick wall? Like, well, then herbs, or encourage them next time they get their shopping, get a rather than your leaves, but get the whole plant if they can, or even then we'll just grab a vegetable because that's still nature, and there is still some connection, and we can imagine where that vegetable has come from. So there are so many different ways that we can be creative, I guess, if we need to, if we are. You obviously Frazzled at the beginning, and the now daily opportunities to be able to join that. So also, can you tell people how they can join, and the advice there as well, and what can people do, or how do they join?
For Frazzled Cafe, sorry, you were just breaking up a little bit there. For Frazzled Cafe, yeah. So there's that's a really easy cafe website, and you can actually sign up, and you can see all the various events that are going on. You just need to sign up, and then you'll get an invite, and then sort of you can connect through. It's on Zoom now, and there are several different sessions all through the days. So whatever time is your time, sort of there's a suitable available session that people. So yeah, please join. It'd be lovely to see you.
Excellent, brilliant. Well, yeah, I've joined a couple, and really enjoyed them. It's been a really lovely experience online, and just a really nice way to kind of almost book some time out. Especially, I joined one the other week because doing these talks has been fantastic, but suddenly I've had a really busy mind and actually felt quite frazzled myself. So suddenly being able to connect into a space that was for me not to be hosting or not to be facilitating, for a chat, and I think we can't underestimate the value of that, really. And I think anyone that is unsure, being able to do it online is actually sometimes, or can feel for some people, an even safer way of doing it to begin with, I think.
Yeah, absolutely, because it can be a bit scary, and certainly in the face-to-face meetings, when people first came, they were quite anxious, and so it took a little bit for them to settle in, and then they kind of realized, obviously, that everybody's the same, but sort of that can sometimes stop people even coming, but it's much easier online because it's just press of a button, so, and you're in your own little safe space. So yeah, it's a brilliant environment. So it's one good thing that's come out of COVID.
Definitely, yes. And then hopefully when we can all meet up face to face again, then more people will have gained that confidence to join as well. So thank you so much, Margaret. Thank you so much for
You're very welcome.
Is there anything
else?
It's
been absolutely lovely.
Thank you. I just want to say if there's anything else you wanted to add, and again, just letting people know how they can follow what Frazzled Cafe does, and anything else that you need to plug.
Yeah, I mean, Frazzled is, you can see all of the information about it on their website, on Frazzled Online. They've got a Facebook page and Instagram and Twitter, so whichever is your mode, your preferred mode. So you can find out all of the information about that on there.
Brilliant. Oh, thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you, Ruth. You take care.
All
Maybe
right.
I'll run one of them in your forest one time.
Very welcome. I would love that.
Great. Bye-bye.
See you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Just going to add at the end of it, thanks again to Margaret and to Frazzled Cafe. Definitely recommend hopping on to Frazzled Cafe's website, checking out the times. They've got a daily chat, sort of 2 or 3 a day a lot of the time, I think, at the moment. And it's a really, really lovely space to join. So let me tell you about the next few chats that I've got coming up. Tomorrow morning, so I'm doing a morning one, so I better make sure I wake up. 9:30 a.m. I am talking to Nature Connections India. So really excited about that and hearing all about nature connection work over in the south of India. And then tomorrow night at 8:30, talking to Make It Wild UK, who do forestation projects and lots of other things. Monday, talking to Ginny Reddy, who's the author of Wonderland, fantastic book that I would highly recommend. And she's joining me Monday night. And then Tuesday is Julia Plevin, an old friend that I know from our days in Vietnam, but she is now back in the States and the founder of a forest bathing club. So really excited to be chatting to her. And then that is kind of the end of this series, but it sounds like there's been a few more people. And while I realised I probably need to take a break after having done one pretty much every night for a while, I imagine that this is not something that will stop, and perhaps it will turn into weekly chats or something like that. And also, it's been wonderful to hear people's feedback in comments. If you want to send me any words, or you'd like to have a chat, or there's something that you'd like me to include or suggest, then please get in touch. Welcome it all. I have heard lots of people saying that they would like to kind of turn the table and ask me the questions, which part of me is incredibly self-conscious about, and likes it this way where it's more about other people speaking and I get to listen and ask questions. But I hear that makes sense. So I will try and organise a night where I answer the questions and any other questions that people, the guests I've had so far, come and join me and do that. But thank you so much. Do join me for the next few chats of this first part of the series. And yeah, I will see you again tomorrow morning.